myself, who has to make this presentation. This was because compared to many other people who have a face value between 12 to 15 score, both of us have a face value of more than 30. You may be wondering, how come? Most people have a face value between here and here, but we have between here and here. Okay. Last week, one of the two CGIAR research program that was launched was the research program on grain legumes. And one of the major ones among the centers in terms of its participation, not only in terms of participation, but also in terms of partnerships and the number of crops that we are dealing with. But again, if you see here, because of all these complications, it had a long gestation period. And even the pregnancy was so tough. Many of us had sleepless nights, but finally, in the last submission that was made in August 2012, which was the 5th version that was submitted, the Fund Council approved it in October, and that too very coincidentally when the World Bank Vice President Rachel Kite was visiting us, and she brought us the good news that the program was approved, and that's how we have initiated. I mentioned this involved possibly the largest number of commodities, and when we started looking at the legumes, we had more than 25 legumes that are cultivated globally. So you can imagine the difficulties that all of us had among those 24, which ones to prioritize, and over long and hard negotiations and discussions among the many partners, we finally decided to put some criterion, and that criterion was in terms of the number of poor that is there on the top, and on the left-hand side that goes vertically was in terms of the area cultivated. So based on these two major criteria, we agreed that 8 legumes are the ones that we need to be addressing. That includes groundnut, chickpea, cowpea, common bean, pigeon pea, lentil, soybean, and faba bean. You will see hazily mung bean that is not included, peas is not included. If some of you who were there in the beginning of the CGIAR, the research program planning, at that time the mega program, mung bean was included, it was in, it was out, and finally we could not include for various reasons, but later on it has been common knowledge that we need to be working on mung bean. So we will be working with the World Vegetable Center, the WRDC, and maybe slowly we will possibly be able to have a greater involvement of mung bean in the system. Soybean is included as a crop, but only in sub-Saharan Africa, mostly because that is a food crop in that particular continent. It's not in South Asia because it is considered an oilseed crop. In terms of the research areas in which the CRP grain legumes works on, as you can see on the top, Cynthia briefly introduced this, we have 5 strategic components on which the CRP will be working on, starting with strategy component 1 that looks at analyzing demand and setting priorities. This is because when we were preparing the proposal, many of the reviewers started asking questions, okay, give us the data. And what we found was, whatever we had was all bad. Bad meaning best available data, BAD. So many times, most of it, what we were writing, people said it's all conjecture. We said some of it is, but many of it is what we have. Because in many cases for the legumes, we really don't have the data in many of the national programs. So that is the reason why this particular strategy component was included, because we needed to gather that data so that we can inform us how to prioritize and what to prioritize and how we can set the research priorities. Then we have the strategy component 2, which was an amalgamation of 2 or more strategic objectives that we had in the earlier versions that includes both varietal development as well as crop management practices as a component, because most of us would realize that either varieties or management alone cannot achieve higher production and productivity, but it is a combination of both. Then we had component 3, which looks at dissemination of these technologies in terms of how do we facilitate distribution or dissemination of technologies that include seed as well as delivery of inputs. So that is strategy component 3. And then strategy component 4 that looks at the whole value of the I mode. How do we add value and how we can empower the farmers to get this to the market and how they can make profit out of the produce that they make. So looking at post-harvest processing and market opportunities for this. And then at the bottom, you have one strategic component that is sort of cross-cutting across, that includes all the whole area of partnerships, innovations, and managing knowledge. So that is an area that involves all these 4 other strategic components. At the bottom, you will see that we have these PL1 to PL8. These are the product lines that are the delivery mechanisms for the CRP on grain legumes. So those product lines have been categorized into 4. First 3 in terms of abiotic stress tolerance and climate change resilience. Because we are dealing with the legumes which have that capacity for fixing nitrogen, a product line that looks at the value and the complexities of nitrogen fixation, how we can enhance it, how we can utilize it in the system as such. One product line that looks at the biotic stresses, because legumes do have a lot of biotic stresses that reduce the yield, and we have that to look after that. Then we have 3 product lines that look at the new opportunities for the future that can help enhancing the legume production and productivity. Just briefly looking at the product lines, I'm not going to give you a full details on this, just quickly indicating the product line 1 that looks at drought and low phosphorus tolerant common bean, cowpea, and soybean. And that is something that would be looked at in the product line 1. Number 2 looks at heat tolerant chickpea, common bean, faba bean, and lentils. Number 3 looks at short duration, drought tolerant, and aflatoxin free groundnuts. Again, as mentioned earlier, a full product line looking at the value of nitrogen fixation in 4 of the legume crops. Not that it is not important in others, but this was the agreement among the partners that we will look at this more thoroughly in these, and then of course the technology generated and the information generated will be available for all the other legumes. Looking at biotic stress tolerance, product line 5 looks at insect smart chickpea, cowpea, and pigeon pea production systems. And mostly because insect pests are a major menace to the legume production, and that's why we thought we could be more recognized if we can enhance this particular component among the several biotic stresses. This does not preclude any other diseases or other biotic stresses that are important, because those are all assumed to be covered when we develop the improved varieties or production systems that are important. People said, why not wilt, fusarium wilt, for example, which is a major constraint? Said, yes, it is important, but imagine any variety that is developed, if it doesn't have fusarium wilt resistance, will it ever fly? No way. So these are all inbuilt into the development of those varieties. So these are not explicitly said, but this will be included. New opportunities in terms of new niches and looking at the climate change and new opportunities that are coming up. The first one looks at extra early chickpea and lentil varieties for climate change, for example, where we will need short duration varieties and other niches that will become available. Product line 7 is something that is new, looking at herbicide tolerance and also machine harvestable chickpea, faba bean, and lentil. People may say, these are all SAT farmers. Will they ever use herbicides? Will they ever be able to use machines? Well, these are the realities of life for the coming years. And if we are not ready, then we will be left out. So we are looking at new opportunities where labor is becoming expensive, but look at the other side. Women are involved in much of the legume cultivation, and many of the activities in terms of weeding, harvest, threshing are all pushed up on women. Women have a lot of drudgery that needs to be considered and reduced. So the whole product line looks at reducing drudgery and enhancing women's empowerment and ensuring that the time saved from all these activities can be better used elsewhere for other productive activities in the system. Product line 8 looks at a new system of pigeon pea hybrids. Currently, that is the only crop where hybrids are possible, but this is an example where more things could come in the way. Again, quickly, the country focus in terms of the different strategic components and other things. I'm not going to dwell much on that because my time is getting up and Syed Salim is looking at me hard and I don't want to take time. In terms of the CRP governance and management, just quickly mentioning that ICRISAT is the lead center. There will be a steering committee that consists of the directors general of the 4 centers plus a few other partners. It will currently being chaired by the lead center DG, but could change later on depending on the need. We have an independent advisory committee which advises, looks at the activities of the CRP and provides advice to the steering committee and of course to the research management committee, which includes the CRP director plus all the product line coordinators. Just to give an indication that currently the fund council, between the fund council and the consortium, this has already been signed previously. Between Biodiversity and ICRISAT, the program implementation agreement has been signed in January, and we have already got these program participant agreements from the other 3 centers, and we would be starting the activities as indicated during the launching workshop. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.